Thank you for tuning in to the Peoplz and Dragons. If you enjoy the content we provide, then subscribe, like, and maybe join in on the action at www.pndrpg.com.
Haven City, an ugly city. Episode 6. Haven's strongest GOKEN. The tall and elegant Mistress Scorn watches over the city of Haven from her ship. The asylum's window spans across the entire deck. The beautiful neon lights reflect off of her porcelain skin. She thinks. It was remarkable how similar the artificial planet and its inhabitants were, so similar to its natural counterparts. She can tell that the Uncown researched people and city life and mastered the technology. She was highly impressed by the instigator's work and very aware of the value of it all. Messages, propositions, live feeds, and all sorts of information flow through her monitors and window overlay. Her network of spider eyes dribble across the prisms of valuable data provided by her seemingly endless network of spies and data mining. There is not much that's not found in the web of information. Mr. Scorn was virtually omnipotent. As a visitor to Anarchy's domain, the mysterious space diplomat and her pirate allies hover over the city of Haven in search of the instigator, but allowed him to escape yet again. What was supposed to take 4 Earth days is now turning into weeks, compromising timely contract deadlines. And most importantly, bursting into the main deck quarters, we see a humanoid wolf in red and gold mercenary armor. His coat was dark and filthy, but his armor was polished and in great condition. Nova was a renowned and infamous space pirate known across the galaxy. He's also Mr. Scorn, or as he calls her, Sheila, Scorn's ally and partner. Nova curses and expresses his frustration with the search of the instigator. He speaks of lost time, opportunities, and risk. Sheila turns to him and tells him to relax because her scheme is proving to be a lucrative fix. Nova had faith in Sheila's plans and asks how much money have they made so far. Sheila Scorn brings up visual displays of all of the G-types they have recruited for Anarchy's enforcers, a farce that she created to abduct self-proclaimed alpha G-types. Beside every G-type, a hefty bid lay beside them from a live auction taking place as they speak. Sheila informs Nova that she will be closing the auction out soon, and will have the G-types shipped and collected. She always kept her faction on the up and up, fed and taken care of. Whenever there was money to be made, she made sure that that was the priority. With Sheila's knowledge of market value and quick turnaround within the universal market, she has been able to turn this setback into a benefit. Nova is impressed by the numbers. If it doesn't smell like money, then it doesn't reach his sense, he quips. Nova warns Scorn that they shouldn't hold on to these G-types too long, though. The instigator really made some fucked up individuals. Let's sell them quick. Sheila agrees. When in walks Doug. her resourceful informant and cornerstone of her means to achieve information. Doug informs Mistress of a scientist named Dr. Skriller, who has discovered an alternate method of triggering gamma mutations within the people. He then brings up an interview of Skriller denouncing the Gate Center's methods and promises not only to reveal his findings to the world, but also expose Gate. Doug informs her that he dug up information on his experiments and knows it involves a machine that taps into a parallel universe. Nova looks at Sheila. "We're taking it then. We'll be able to spit out endless freaks for sale on the market with that machine." Sheila acknowledges the potential and commands Doug to ramp up the cover operation that blames the Survey Day for the missing and abducted G-types. Sheila tells Nova to wake up Boomer in case things get messy with their captive G-types. She then begins to plan for her attendance to Skriller's approaching AIOP summit. Rezanok stands in the dark, leaning over a bathroom counter, peering into a mirror. He observes himself as if being reunited with a familiar stranger. Deftude's cognitive experiments brought forth his true nature, in addition to altering his DNA, both taking great physical and mental toll on his body, forcing 4 days of sleep. In the reflection, Rez sees the door behind him open up more, and in walks the silhouette of Nam Ki. Rez turns and approaches her. He wraps his toned and chiseled body around her and the two hug passionately. Nam's lavender eye glows bright in the dark room. Finally awake, Rez looks into her eyes and smiles. Sorry, he says. She sees the galaxy swirling within his eyes. It was strange, but other than that, he seemed normal, she thinks. We cut to Rez and Nam walking down a rocky path floating in the middle of glowing darkness. The path led to a small oasis that was a mix of a tropical island, beach, palm trees, an outdoor shrine, and a luxury log cabin with a fireplace. Suspended in the void all around them were melted clocks and strange shapes made of pure gold and glass. Through intense study and meditation, Nam has mastered the ability to shape her consciousness and turn them into stable pocket realms for her, Deftude, and Rez to be safe in. Rezanok and Nam sit and discuss how he feels physically and mentally. He shares his dreams with Nam over food and drink as she facilitates a tarot card reading for him. Together they speak of fate, destiny, the meaning of life, and Deftude. We sense that Nam and Rez have grown much closer to each other. The energy between them is warm and magnetic. Walking out of the fire of the large fireplace, Deftude appears. His small frame, garbed in a long white coat, was akin to a child in nightclothes headed to bed. Deftude greets both Rez and Nam just before questioning Rez to see how he feels. Deftude begins to discuss their next objective. He first tells the story of a scientist named Alice, who accidentally discovered a hidden matrix in the tank that housed mutations created by myself and the instigator. This code was the result of our negligence and was never stowed away properly, becoming low-hanging fruit for any genius to discover, and so Alice did. Deftude pours himself, Nam and Rez a tall glass of pink fluid, thinner than water. He reminds them to stay hydrated or this cognitive realm will kill them. Although already fully hydrated, Rezanok drinks up his glass in an instant and hands Nam hers. Deftude and Rezanok wait for her to drink, and she does. And Deftude continues. She was stopped, But today her research has re-emerged. Her apprentice named Dr. Skriller claims to have created a device that not only taps into our storage dimension, or as he calls it, Panet, 90% of the time, but it turns the subject into a conduit between realms, resulting in the code source being used up. Deftude brings up Skriller on a television that manifests before all them. It's designed just as bizarre and out of place like everything else. Deftude shows Rez and Nam Skriller and his bodyguard. He tells them that tomorrow Skriller will be displaying his Panet theory to the city. Deftude removes his black mask and lays his large, soulless eyes on Rez and Nam. He asks them to investigate and hear of his discovery. The Panet dimension is simply a doorway into our lockbox of mutations. Deftude stands up and points at Rezanok. That data, those mutations belong to you. If indeed this machine leads us to the code that we have missed, we need that device. However, we will not take it by force. Skriller's bodyguard, the 4'9" man with curly hair named Clyde Godfrey, has been augmented by the machine and requires more planning to deal with. So for now, just watch, listen, and discover where that device is being kept. Rezanok and Nam prepare themselves for their task. Rezanok is excited for more code and is appreciative for Deftude wanting to improve him. He runs to his quarters for his sweatsuit. Nam finds comfort in Rezanok's enthusiasm and feels less guilty. Her worries that Rezanok wouldn't be the same after killing his persona of innocence is slowly subsiding. She pulls out the card in which his innocence is contained. Deftude places his hand on hers while looking up at her. He eases her conscience by reminding her that Rezanok is his true self now, more deliberate in his actions. If he kills, it is his true desire and nature to do so. Deftude points at the card. That was a cage. He is free now. Nam nods. She understands. She just can't shake the minor distrust that she has for the eternal child, Deftude. She wonders to herself if Rezanok trusts Deftude more than he trusts her. She's curious, and she turns to leave, but before she departs, Deftude tells her to remember to keep an eye on him and report his behavior. Most importantly, don't get involved and stay clear of Clyde. Nam Ki nods. Rezanok approaches, his face serious and intense. He stands beside Nam, who is reading his face, then looks to Deftude. A vortex of darkness, lightning, and stones come swirling around both of them as Nam Ki pulls them both out of the cognitive realm. We cut to the front of Alice Institute of Panet. Dr. Skriller stands before the city. In attendance, an assortment of civilians, some who have yet to awaken their latent mutations, looking for an alternate and easy way of evolving so that they can possibly defend themselves. Some of them just want to rob banks, but most of them just want to defend themselves and rob banks. There were many journalists and media figureheads who were there for the supposed expose of the Gate Center. Anarchy 12 is watching as well, through the many Gorgons lurking about. He wasn't opposed to the idea of more G-types born outside of the influence of Tempest. Skriller gets straight to the point. Pointing at the camera as if talking to Tempest himself, Skriller begins to shame Gate for their methods of awakening G-types. An unanswered question and a mystery. Many would like to believe it was the world's best scientists and trainers, often echoed by famous Gate agents, but it isn't just that. Skriller brings up a photo of a young boy. Skriller reveals that Gate intentionally infected the child with the virus that mutated his DNA. The most recent massive earthquake was from this poor child's overwhelming mutation in their underground labs. I wouldn't be surprised if the child was ripped apart by his own seismokinesis. The people of Haven gasp. We cut to a close-up of Tempest watching Skriller live, thinking to himself, how was he able to retrieve this information? It had to be a leak. It was true. Tempest gives the green light to have a virus administered into the G-Type 0, making them into a G-Type 1. He discovered this method by using his temporal anomalies and his third eye to learn from his mistakes and past cycles, and then passes that information on to his scientists. This method was more controllable, discreet, and yielded less casualties to mass mutation. Although the virus did have complications every now and then, the child, little Akasame, is doing just fine, however. Tempest rubs his head, massaging a severe migraine, and continues to tune in to Skriller's expose. We see Nam and Rezanok standing in hoods among the crowd, with their heads down. Rezanok is watching Skriller like a hawk, listening to every word spilling from his mouth. Nam Ki observes both Rezanok and Skriller. Rezanok is clearly putting his all into this for Deftitude. As serious as ever, he whispers to Nam, "I've been in the Gate Labs before. They were really nice and accommodating. But if this is true, that means the Gate Center has a mole. Maybe I should return and warn them." She tells him to relax, and that Deftitude isn't worried about Gate. Rezanok asks her if she's listening to Dr. Skriller as well, just in case she remembers what he might forget. Nam rolls her amber and lavender eyes and begins to pay closer attention to Skriller's revelations. She begins to wonder what Dravko is up to. Skriller's bodyguard, Clyde Godfrey, fetches a device the size of a traffic cone and places it on a platform. Skriller explains Panet theory in a way the masses can understand. He starts by explaining the existences of the Pans-dimensional gateway, that once we gain access to it, it can extend us far beyond our natural means. By nature, we have one cup. Panet is essentially a straw which connects two or more cups together, enabling you to consume from multiple cups or move liquid between said cups. Rezanok turns to Nam. Panet is a straw leading into the tank's codex. Nam acknowledges and adds that he also said it would also pull from other cups. Rezanok looks back at the podium. What other dimension could exist behind the tank's matrix, he thinks. Nam says maybe we should ask him. Rezanok gets serious and gears up to say no way when he realizes Nam is being facetious. And then he starts laughing. Nam joins in and whispers, "No, seriously, I think you can take him on, Rez." Referring to Clyde Godfrey, Skriller's 4-foot bodyguard. Rez playfully tugs Nam by her waist. "Shh, listen, he's about to show us." The camera pans over a few feet and we see Shiro Aoi eavesdropping on the Safe Haveners' conversation. Dr. Skriller announces that the AIOP, Alice Institute of Panet, will also be forming their own faction of G-types. However, we will not infect them with some infectious blight. We will merge them to their own Panet gateway. Dr. Skriller extends his arm out dramatically and welcomes any who wish to become the first members of the Prime Jumpers. Silence falls over the people. Everyone knew that becoming a Prime Jumper was a slap in Tempest's face. Nam looks around. She sees the yearn in the face of the people, the yearning for getting power and their life in their own hands again. They were food. But out of respect for Gate and Tempest, everyone shunned this pathway to becoming a G-Type 1. It begins to rain. Skriller and Godfrey look around as no one steps up until finally, echoing across the stage, we see a seasoned, chiseled military man walking toward them. Godfrey approaches him and asks his name, and then he knew who he already was. A very controversial ex-captain of Atlas's private army, Scott Stone, who was dishonorably discharged for undisclosed reasons. There were many conspiracies surrounding his fallout with Atlas's military, but one thing was for certain. He hated Jeremiah Oliver, and naturally Gate, for being affiliated. It was no surprise seeing him up there. Clyde shakes his hand and escorts him over to the panic device. Clyde straps in Scott standing up while on a slant. Dr. Skriller activates the device, and Scott Stone's DNA is instantly linked to the tank's hidden codex and is patched with random data. Through Skriller's eyes, everything worked as planned, and Scott Stone emerges from the light holding his hands out, his hands feeling heavy. He inhales and can sense his inner organs feel like formations of rocks. He clenches his fist tight and causes a small tremor under the podium. Everyone seems amazed and begin chattering amongst each other because it worked flawlessly. Scott Stone's mutation allowed him to shake things up a bit. We cut to Nam giggling. That was supposed to be your power, Rez. Rezanok's fist tightens. We cut to a red, unclassified bird overlooking the forum from a building top. It immediately picks up a change in the air currents. Rezanok is instantly notified, and Nam senses his disturbance and asks what's wrong. Rezanok pulls Nam closer as the rain is blocked by something large appearing from above. Several spaceships materialize above everyone. Each of them were unique in design, jury-rigged and scrappy. They appeared to have been through a lot except for one. The Asylum. Not even closest to the largest, folding out of it is a bridge, elegant in design, gold and wood, connecting it to Skriller's platform. Exiting the Asylum, we see several scruffy space pirates wielding high-tech rifles, followed by Nova, and at last, Mistress Scorn. The people of Haven have never seen this odd and seemingly otherworldly group. They just didn't feel like they were from here, nor have they ever seen such a beautiful, alien-like woman. Tempest's favor with the people is immediately compromised from the jump when they see Mistress Scorn. Mistress Scorn begins to applaud Skriller's project. She then introduces herself as Anarchy's recruiter for his elite G-type enforcers. Dr. Skriller is confused and Clyde steps in front of him. Using her unquestionable diplomacy, Mistress Scorn talks Skriller into handing over his device and all of his Panet research. She massages him into believing he will go down in history as the scientist who propelled Anarchy 12's world vision. Dr. Skriller is on board. He demands his secrets remain with him and those that he trusts only. Scorn talks him out of his demands and renders it minutia. Clyde completely disagrees with Skriller's forfeit and attempts to talk sense into him but fails. Clyde prepares to engage Scorn and her pirates as Nova's two sabers explode and ignite with celestial radiance. Scorn teleports and blanks right in front of Clyde, her poise signaling peace. As Dr. Skriller's primary bodyguard, Clyde Godfrey is an Alpha G-type in every sense of Anarchy's definition of an Alpha G-type. The fact that Anarchy has yet to abduct him is a testament to Clyde Godfrey's power. He possesses the ability to remove energy from this universe, enabling him to completely erase energy with a yield of up to the equivalent of 110 kilotons of TNT, in the addition to eliminating oncoming attacks either by removing the objects or slowing them down until they stop in place. This ability is often used to freeze things or send them flying in various directions. That direction they fly in being based on the time of day, as it works by removing the orbital momentum that keeps them moving at the same speed as the planet. Clyde also possesses a secondary mutation he calls seeing the clockwork, which allows him to perceive everything in slow motion and instantly determine the speed, weight, and temperature of anything he sees. Mr. Scorn knows. She's done her homework. She lowers herself to near eye level. Like a knife coming across his throat, Mistress whispers a threat to reveal his own secrets that would ruin his life. Clyde, stunned by her knowledge of such, stumbles back as if choking on his own blood. Mr. Scorn then announces that Clyde Godfrey is now working for her. Clyde's secrets leave him bound in her web, powerless, the way many gods have laid entangled within the mistress's web. Nova taunts Clyde from afar, telling him to pick on people his own size, as we see space pirates hauling off all of the equipment, scientists, and research from out of the Institute and into the pirate ships. Mistress Scorn, the anachronistic arachnid galactic diplomat, seemingly glides across and up and onto the asylum, followed by Dr. Skriller, Clyde Godfrey, the first prime jumper Scott Stone, all escorted by Doug. Nova pans his glare over the crowd one last time. Any Alpha G types feel they have what it takes? Shiro contemplates hopping on board but is waiting for one last piece of information. We cut to a Shiro clone somewhere deep within a Survey Day catacomb amongst hundreds of Survey Day cultists who were already dead when he got there. Shiro knows nothing of the Ikermancer's recent rapturing of souls, but he does see a large hologram of looping footage of a frantic Survey Day cultist speaking. Shiro approaches and adjusts the volume, where he begins to hear an urgent warning to the cult that Fenton is a false prophet, Bayrinth is a false god, and that our true god has returned to punish us. Shiro then sees footage of the instigator ripping apart the entire army. The cultist puts the camera back onto himself and begins to repent for his blasphemy, encouraging others to do the same. Shiro can't believe the destruction just one man was causing. Was it a man at all? He wonders. Shiro notices the spaceships and wonders if the pirates and the cult are connected, possibly. There's only one way to find out. We cut back to the Shiro at the summit. Shiro walks through the crowd of Tempest lovers and is taken in by Nova. Nam-Ki grabs Rez's arm and urges that they intervene, disregarding Deftude's orders. Nam-Ki knew this was a defining moment to witness how loyal Rez truly was to Deftude. Rez pulls her back. He tries to reason with Nam. We should just lay low and observe as Deftude ordered. Nam tells him that if that device leaves on that ship, we could never see it again. A device that Deftude wants, Rez, and what will lead to more mutation code for you. Nam almost expected that last part to entice Rez's hunger, but since Grinfall, his hunger has been satiated. He's more focused, more calculated. Rez attempts to pull Nam in closer to him, but she moves nowhere. He forgot how much stronger than him she was. Before Nam could say anything, Rezanok gets intimately closer to her, face to face. Nam, please. I'm just beginning to learn who and what I am, and Deftude is to credit. This morning, the cards showed Nam that more was in store for the path she was on. If Rez wouldn't walk down that path with her, then it was his loss. Rezanok knew that Nam is on a path, and when she's on her path guided by the cards, there's no stopping her. He reads her, and before Nam could say a word, Rez exhales a mint-colored spore mist from his mouth that flows and crashes into her face. Nam is overcome with pure ecstasy and amnesia. Rezanok then turns them both into a gale of wind and blows upward and onward, unseen. Mr. Scorm's asylum, Nova and his pirate ships filled with G-types, Shiro, Dr. Skriller, and the patent device, ascends into the sky and departs. Off in the distance, we pan over to what appears to be a cloaked figure standing upon the almighty digital watchtower. Whoever it is, seems they have observed the entire summit. They turn and descend into the darkness. The next morning, we cut to a cheering crowd as thousands of Haveners congregate in front of the Gate Center. It was the eve of the Gate Summit, and there was no safer place to be than in the center of Haven City in front of the gate. It was commonplace for people to congregate here, as Gate agents would never tolerate the harming of Haveners under their watchful eye. Though it was illegal to be a hero, some Gate agents still managed to be where they needed to be in order to save someone and be gone before a peacekeeper arrived. Maybe Anarchy enjoyed the idea of Gate unlocking their enlisted G-Type's potential. Perhaps it was like window shopping for him. This has crossed Tempest's mind. Time and time again, Tempest would lose promising agents to wanderers, taken and never seen again, unless their own faces were plastered on a new android menace. Today was the day that ends. The 78th cycle would be the cycle Tempest takes fate into his own hands. Tempest is forming Gate's first unified force of G-Types, a unit tasked with saving Haven from its seemingly inevitable demise using Tempest's third eye time manipulation. Learning from failures of cycles past, Tempest now knows what he must do to defeat the Survey Day and prevent Emerald Prophecy. Force awakening G-Types and taming the Janitor was just the beginning. Haven's ultimate representation of hope will be of G-Types he strategically puts together himself. We see helicopters and journalists flooding Tempest as he and the Gate scientist, who is also the founder of the virus used to awaken mutations, Polamic Stillwell, take on barrages of questions about Skriller's accusations. With Tempest's star power, emotional sway, and faith of the crowd, Polamic Stillwell's explanation for why their awakening method is administered the way it is was well received, digestible, and makes sense to everyone. Polamic reiterates that it's the life-preserving route to avoid abominations. Tempest is then asked why is it exclusive to Gate agents, to which he replies cryptically with, "Because Gate agents are the ones that will save us all." The snarky journalist reminds Tempest that saving is illegal. Tempest smiles. He can see she is excited as neon electricity dances around her head through his eyes. Tempest holds up between his pointer and thumb the journalist's incredibly expensive engagement ring and says, "Then how unfortunate," as he begins to juggle the ring between his fingers dexterously. The journalist realizes it's their ring and, in shock, reaches for it, but Tempest pulls it away and asks passionately, "Why can't Haven catch a break for once? Damn." Tempest snaps his fingers. The ring appears back on the journalist's finger. He then walks toward the Gate Center to prepare to greet the G-Types who have risen, fearless of Anarchy's reign. Through a first impression, Tempest's multifaceted sense of emotions would easily allow him to see valor and benevolence within a potential unit. He then will invite them in to form the group and then announce their alliance to the city tomorrow morning. The first G-Type that steps to Tempest is the outcast scientist, Nivel Threndord, a muscular and athletically fit scientist in a dirty lab coat. His face is in need of a laser shave and water. Anarchy 12's ex-scientist went solo when he discovered Anarchy's world vision. Once he heard of Tempest's new force, he was the first to rise. Nivel knew he could be a great asset, especially once he gets access to Gate Atlas's cutting-edge technology courtesy of Jerry Oliver. Tempest shakes his hand and kindly thanks him for the force bubble keeping the Gamma Calidians contained during Grenfall. Genuine courageousness and compassion can be seen spiraling into and around his scruffy beard. Nivel asks if there were facilities he could clean up in. Tempest directs Nivell into the center, escorted by Johnny Sniff, who takes a whiff of the outcast scientist and escorts him with haste. The next G-type to greet Tempest was odd-looking, a young woman in her mid-20s. Karma Luck Kane was a goth punk, a teal, white, and gray ponytail with shaved sides, pale flesh, and a red rubber leotard. Tempest was told she'd be showing up. He knows better than anyone to not judge a G-type by their cover. Despite her odd and intimidating appearance, she was quite the hero who had the ability to steal and distribute luck. She's known for being one of a few G-types Anarchy identified as an alpha. Tempest was impressed by her hidden compassion. He didn't agree with the people she surrounded herself with, but one thing was for certain: she wasn't corruptible. Karma Luck Kane doesn't shake Tempest's hand. She does, however, speak. Her and Tempest manage to hold a deep yet brief discussion. She speaks of the city, changing fate, and inquiries about their famous G-type training facility. Tempest invites her inside and promises to show her later. Judge Benedict Hames comes and escorts her in. The beautiful Islander Epony approaches, ushering in a family of hummingbirds and carrying with her a sweet aroma of the Thousand Islands. Tempest recalls her grace during their brief bout, as well as how she was capable of holding off the janitor for some time. Epony's curiosity of Haven City exponentially increases after Grenfall and her run-in with the janitor and Tempest. She knew that Tempest and Gate were the best people to be associated with if she was going to make a difference in the ugly city. Tempest greets Epony. They speak of hope for the city and its people, as well as the city's enemies and its issues. Tempest ensures that they will dive deeper into the matters tonight and directs her inside. Johnny Sniff returns to escort her in, but is incredibly bashful. He has never seen a goddess in person and nearly is paralyzed by her beautiful scent, her volumetric curls, curves, and shapely frame. Tempest helps Johnny snap out of it so he could escort her in. The air gets cold, and Tempest's face tenses up when he is approached by a sinister-looking figure. We see murky, knee-padded high boots pacing slowly toward Tempest, accompanied by the acoustics of jangling chains and various ninja weaponry fastened within neatly placed tool belts, all easily accessible under the shadowy shroud that is Ivan Bakara's cloak. Ivan reaches Tempest, then glances all around at the crowd and flashing cameras before placing his glowing white, demented eyes on him. Ivan extends his hand for a shake and introduces himself. His emotions appeared as globs of pulsating angst and happiness, but its shapes were off-putting and disturbing. Tempest shakes his hand and greets him. A brief lapse of awkward silence passes while Tempest explores Ivan's mystery as best as he can. Ivan's grin doesn't even change and was already quite familiar with Tempest and Gate. They begin to converse about Haven's current state. Ivan expresses his deep sorrow for the victims of gang violence and declares his allegiance with Tempest. Tempest can't help but sense the disingenuousness. Ivan combs both hands through his own long beard, then wiggles his fingers.
I got connections like your boy Jeremiah Oliver. I can talk to some people. I can make some waves.
Tempest tells Ivan that he should keep doing what he can do to help Haven and that Gate will monitor his success.
I ain't no P-Schwank. I can fight real good. Put me up against R-Type X 3 times, he'll win X times.
Tempest politely reiterates that he isn't what they need right now. A voice emerges from nowhere. You're too old, Grandpop. Tempest Gray makes himself visible by restoring the light he withheld from their eyes and turns upright under Ivan's extended arm, peering into the void of his cloak. Surprised, Ivan steps back while slicing downward at Tempest, but he evades it with ease. The crowd gets amped up. Tempest steps between Ivan and Tempest and asks Tempest Gray to head inside. Tempest smirks at Ivan while twirling a knife he lifted from Ivan between his fingers. Tempest turns to Ivan, but before he could say anything, Ivan fades into the void, then back out, placing him yards away as he walks off. He turns around one last time and he and Tempest make eye contact before he descends into the crowd. Suddenly, a vision comes to Tempest. He sees a future version of himself screaming words that he can't hear, and then is suddenly snatched up and pulled out of sight. Tempest snaps back to the current time and holds his head from the migraine-inducing vision. The visions usually gave him more context and a better visual. Tempest turns, smiles, and thanks all of those who came out. He reminds the crowd of the fundraiser Gate is facilitating and to donate if they can. He then invites them all back out for the summit tomorrow morning to see the new team. We cut to the crowd and news journalists chasing after Ivan to get a statement about what just happened, but just then, Ivan flickers away like a ghost, leaving our plane. The news reporter stumbles forward, bringing himself back up to his feet, obviously disgruntled, and says, "Well, it appears Tempest is sticking to his rules. Not everyone gets into the Gate Center. What is it that he requires? This still remains to be known. Is Tempest discriminating?" We cut to the inside lobby of the Gate Center. Many Gate residents from all walks of life, old, young, and orphaned, watch from afar. They all knew the unit being formed would be the sole protectors of Gate and the city. Tempest gives a heartfelt speech and outlines why he brought them here today. To form a cohesive team, a unit that exists to protect Haven and ultimately the world. Most importantly, he needs them to trust his vision. Tempest continues, "With each of your skill sets, and of course your mutations, we will be the pumping heart of the city that keeps it alive." Ebony's eyes sparkle with pure enthusiasm. Her positive emotions nearly blind Tempest. Neville Threndorn smiles and inhales deeply. He feels truly inspired by Tempest and is happy to be on the right side of history. Timbers Gray, though slightly starstruck by Tempest's presence, is anxious for him to stop talking so he can inform him of the real shit that's going to happen, from the vision that he received from the strange device. Karma Kane realizes she's becoming part of something big. She hopes that for once in her life she can stick to what's good for her. This can be her safe place away from her secret drug addiction that pulls her back around the shadowy crowds. The front doorway opens quietly. Tempest senses a wild yet familiar emotion nearby. He turns, and for the first time in this current cycle, he sees Haven's strongest, Ryu Sengoku. To everyone else, some mysterious kid. Upon Kid R-Type's head was a glowing fitted hat, shaped from the aura vitae he somehow retrieved from Saoirse. With her aura's energy locked into shape, it has stabilized his overmutated cells, preventing him from becoming an abomination. Tempest's eyes widen, triggering the others to turn and look toward the kid. Young Raelagarian warriors were tall and muscular for their age, so only Tempest knew that he was smaller than he was supposed to be. We cut to Ebony. It was like time itself has seemingly stopped. Her deep connection to the planet and all of nature makes the vibrations of R-Type's energy that much more cerebral. She feels the planet trembling below him, just as the legend said they would. She recalls her own father speaking highly of those who embodied the dragons. He said the planet would respond in such a way. Tempest asks for the group to meet him in the training rooms while he catches up with an old friend. We cut to Tempest and R-Type X on the roof of the Gate Center catching up with each other. R-Type is short with details of his journey, especially the most recent events in his life, turning him into a child. He can barely recall it himself. He does, however, share with Tempest his beliefs on the true nature of the planet they are on. Tempest listens closely to R-Type's views and needs more time to digest it all. It was quite complex. Tempest tells R-Type of the unknown immediate threat, that is the Survey Day and Anarchy 12. R-Type looks at Tempest with silence and doesn't agree nor disagree with Tempest's objectives. But Tempest knows R-Type is a man of few words. Tempest invites R-Type to join the Gate's new force. He even goes as far as to telling R-Type the name of the group. Haven's strongest GOKEN, in honor of all R-Type has done for Haven in the past. He is naming the force after the unbeatable GOKEN Jubentai, the division of Imperial Guards and the primary elite military branch of Raylagar. R-Type is intrigued and ultimately flattered. Tempest extends an open invitation to R-Type X, which R-Type expresses the need to sleep on it. Tempest requests that R-Type join him in helping him learn what each member is capable of. R-Type nods and they both head to the training rooms. We see Tempest, R-Type, and several gate trainers specialized in team building and combat synergy standing before the group. Tempest introduces the group to R-Type X and explains that he will help assess our strengths and weaknesses. R-Type was perfect for the task. The instigator's largest biological success was the Libra cell placed in R-Type. Libra allowed him to compartmentalize memories on a grand scale, turning his brain to the ultimate processor. Over lifetimes of experience, with his own abilities and facing others with theirs, gave R-Type X superhuman combat IQ and awareness. During his battle with the Light, R-Type's Libra mutated and reached its full potential. R-Type will make team building quite easy by becoming the obstacle that gauges their synergistic finesse between their mutations and skills. Over the span of the following hour, each member is put to the test and made to push themselves to their limits. They are given objectives designed for the utilization of their skills. We see Timbers Gray moving through a highly guarded course, unseen, then faced with traps that could maim anyone without the awareness or reflexes to avoid them. Timber skates past them, even outsmarting the trap makers by exploiting flaws in their articulate machinations with street smarts and common sense. He is then tasked with avoiding R-Type X's strikes. R-Type X is intrigued by Timbers' raw and instinctive reflexes and learns that not even he could lay a finger on Timbers. Tempest gives R-Type X a boost of speed to see how it affects the playing field. But even this is offset when Timbers denies light from R-Type's eyes and Mind's eye. This not only made him totally invisible, but also gave him a dramatic boost in speed while invisible. But there was seemingly more to it. R-Type's Libra determines that Timbers' on-again and off-again invisibility is disrupting his perception of his location and movement in more sinister ways. Timbers' denial of light seems to be fogging up R-Type's brain, and thus memories of the most recent events to the second. Timbers would appear in the peripherals of R-Type, catching him open constantly. Very problematic, R-Type thinks. But good news for the group. We cut to Neville Threndorn, channeling his will into a golden beam that creates a translucent force field around R-Type X. R-Type X and the trainers study the beam and discover that it is of an unknown source that cannot be altered or manipulated by R-Type. R-Type runs his hand along the force field. Interesting. R-Type begins to test its durability by trying to break through it with raw strength, then energy waves, but to no avail. Nivell's bubble up mutation proved incredibly powerful. He was also quite the genius in the lab and has already made some suggestions on how to improve Gate Center's defenses. We cut to Karma Kane and R-Type X racing through an obstacle course in order to test Karma's luck manipulation mutation. And just as expected, she lands perfectly on every platform, and the timing of it all was impeccable. R-Type X, however, is met with a series of unfortunate events triggering missed time jumps and even course malfunctions as expected. Something such as luck was non-physical and hence untraceable by R-Type's Libra, and so he couldn't provide any extra observations. Tempest was very intrigued. We then cut to a sparring match between R-Type and Epony, something Tempest wanted to personally see. He recalls Epony's unique combat proficiency and wanted to see how she fares against someone of similar caliber, but also against other types of martial arts. Ebony was versatile, and so the team could be built around her. We see Ebony stretch. She lifts and stretches her long leg outward, then brings it back into a graceful twirl, transitioning into another stretch. She tells R-Type she won't go easy on him just because he's a kid. R-Type sees, and Libra recognizes Ebony's stretching regimen. Tapping into a memory of training in the Oceania Islands in Cycle 67, R-Type covers himself in a thin veil of energy to shield himself from any potential toxins the Islanders love to use. Ebony smiles and tenses up as she is suddenly overcome with an electric current that causes her to shine like a bulb, while her Islander attire flaps in the wind. Ebony is charged, her nervous system and adrenaline amplified. She suddenly teleports. R-Type X's eyes widen as Ebony appears into a lightning leg sweep. R-Type is taken off of his feet but catches himself landing on both hands until Ebony comes sweeping back around with a double sweep that leaves a trail of molten lava in its path. That R-Type X flips over. Like the climax of an elaborate dance move, Ebony pushes off of the ground, leaping into the air with a flurry of swift but powerful kicks. R-Type deflects each of them with his wrists, causing vibrant clouds of toxic spores to explode on impact. Ebony hits the ground, backflips, and waits for the spores' disorienting effects to kick in. R-Type fans away the mist with one hand, unaffected. Ebony looks surprised, confused, but determined. Two Kid-type X-clones begin laughing and heckling Ebony from the stands. All the trainers, including Tempest, shoot them a look. It starts to rain and the wind begins to pick up inside the training room. Everyone, including Tempest, wonders who's messing with the room controls, until Tempest realizes the storm is coming from the storm of emotion building within Ebony. These weren't feelings of frustration or anger, however. These were feelings of hope. For the first time, Tempest has seen the same kind of hope that he has for the people in Haven in another person. Ebony blinks away and appears in front of R-Type X, bringing with her torrential rains, and begins throwing rapid punches and kicks, gracefully combining agility while leveraging the strength from her powerful legs. R-Type X reads and evades each strike, allowing her to display her prowess to the trainers, including him. Curious of her strength and reflexes, R-Type performs his own neat trick. King's Will, God's Choice. Allowing Ebony's spiraling heel to come crashing down on his head. R-Type's plan was to capture her kick and bind her with the clone he placed. But her strike was so incredibly powerful and augmented by the earth that it shatters his clone's defenses and crushes it completely. R-Type appears above her with a taunting facial gesture as Ebony begins to shift her assault to above her. She begins to teleport tactically while fighting him, and R-Type begins utilizing more clones to test her strength and reflexes. Ebony's legs come spiraling from all directions like an elastic helicopter propeller, slicing the wind with their heat. R-Type dips and dodges in mid-air, his arms folded. Ebony charges herself with lightning and teleports at the same time, causing a shockwave that blows open R-Type's eardrums, stunning him as well as knocking him off of his feet. Ebony reappears mid-scissor kick and slices right into R-Type's body, sending him crashing into the ground. R-Type looks up and taunts her to show her that he is unhurt. His cannon field absorbed the brunt of the kinetic force from her blow. Tempest is monitoring the sparring inside of a massive temporal anomaly to keep up with their movements. Ebony teleports several times and begins landing blows R-Type cannot seem to block. The unorthodox and rhythmic Oceania arts was a complex martial art that Libra could not defend because the teleporting disguised its movements. It was hard to learn a martial art when you could barely see it. However, R-Type finds a way. He begins to detect and foresees her actions by drawing parallels between her, the angles she teleports to, and her emotions after missing terribly. After R-Type has seen enough, he captures her hip strike, and though it was like getting hit by a car, he holds on tightly as several kid clones pile onto her and begin pulling her hair, sticking their fingers up her nose and tugging on her eyelids painfully. The real R-Type X appears in front of her with a finger made of blue energy, plucks her nose, causing a great burst of force and spiraling rays of black energy that blows her and the pile of kids backward in all directions while rolling across the course. Ebony lays on the ground, shaking, but she crawls to her feet but falls again. She lays there motionless for a moment. She then pulls herself up as the rain begins to die down. R-Type X stands calmly. Tempest tells everyone that should be good for now. Ebony controls her passion and accepts her loss at the hand of the great fighter she admires. Tempest gathers everyone and tells them to relax and clean up a bit. Then to meet him in the war room. He hands each of them their own unique gate uniforms, which were all white, and slight variations of what they were already comfortable in, except the shoulder area of the suit bore light shoulder plates that were completely translucent and contained some strange light bending effect. Tempest congratulates them and welcomes them to the Haven's strongest, GOKEN.